Okay, so welcome back again, and we've got it all put together. Everything is functioning perfectly. We sent electricity to this coil. It put magnetic flux in this rod. This rod transmitted that magnetic flux to this coil. This coil took AC voltage and sent it to the full wave bridge rectifier, who created DC voltage, and that DC voltage was conditioned and sent to the system, and it's just everything's fine. Here we go. And the only thing that we would want to mention to you of this topic is that the people who understand magnetics may look at you and say, well, hang on a second, you're creating electrical energy through a system of the transfer of any system that you have in place using magnetics. You really need to be sure from a magnetics viewpoint that what you're asking magnetic energy to do is something that magnetic energy will do. And that brings us to just a quick discussion of magnetics and why we're talking about magnetics. The truth is, all we really want is power to run these components. And these components are the 60 gigahertz transceiver and the quark processing system to have the gigahertz transceiver behave in a manner where it can help the central processing unit of the robot. And these parts are small and well thought out, and we're not really going to be able to create parts that do this other than parts that are electronic. So we do have to have an availability of electrical power. And you may say, well, then why are we using magnetic power? And the answer is, we don't care where the power comes from. We can use any other form of power that's available. The problem is, you can go down the list of what power sources are available in this tiny little space. Remember that this distance right here is 2 inches. And this distance is 1 inch and 3/4. And this distance from here to there is maybe a 1/2 inch. So you could go down the list of energy sources. Chemical energy. You're not going to find a source of chemical energy that is well known, stable, and available to put inside of something this small. You may say battery. A battery is a kind of a special example of chemical energy. You could actually put a battery in here. The problem with batteries is, as they discharge themselves, how are you going to recreate the charge and power of the battery? Because remember, this piston is inside of this cylinder, and this piston is operating in an environment of water at 400 pounds per square inch. So this piston system is created of a piston body that holds all the parts and a cap that is bolted down or glued down to this piston to create an intact waterproof system. So taking this apart to change a battery is just not really feasible. Our next thought might be, okay, well, let's just send electrical power down here. But in order to have electrical power outside of this cylinder go down into this piston head, you're going to have to machine a channel into this rod, fill that channel with a material that is an insulator, and then machine that down so it's smooth, and then machine a channel in the insulator, and then put a metal material in that channel so that you have one side of your electrical circuit and the other side of your electrical circuit is insulated so that you can have a separation of conductors. And all this has to be done in a material that you can machine and polish and will work as a rod, because this hydraulic cylinder has two jobs. One job is to supply power, but the other job is to supply position information. And another option would be the consideration of wrapping a coil of wire around this piston and then bringing it down inside the rod and sending the wire down to this piston head. But as you wrap a coil of wire around this piston, very much like a spring, there is the possibility that this is going to get tangled up, or that it's going to flex and contract and flex and contract as the piston moves, and may get work hardened and may have connections that are hard to successfully use. And so the final thought process that we went through is an advantage of magnetics is that magnetic energy can go from this external coil into this rod. It can be transmitted from this rod down into this piston head. The magnetic energy that is transmitted through the rod to this coil in the piston head, that energy is traveling through the rod. And so that you don't need any moving parts, you don't need any sliders, you don't need any coils of wire. And all in all, it's just a fine way to transmit power and solve all of the mechanical issues that come up as you attempt to provide power to the inside of this piston.